So this is the WordPress dashboard, and this is where you're going to be spending most of your time when you're working with WordPress. In this video, I'll give you a quick tour of the main parts of the dashboard and show you how to manage and set up your site. You might be wondering at this point what your site actually looks like, and we can see it by hovering over example WordPress site, and I'm just going to command click or control click on Windows Visit Site to open it up in a new tab. So this is it. So you can see we've got the site title there, example WordPress site, and we've got just another WordPress site. We'll see how to change that in a moment. And then our basic setup is quite blog-like. So we've got our first blog post here, which has been generated for us. And then we've got a search button and some recent posts down here on the side, as well as log out, site admin, etc. So it doesn't look like much, but don't worry, we can change it into something beautiful very easily. But before we worry about beauty, let's get the site working as we'd like. So first off, you can see this update option at the top there. You may or may not see that depending on what version you've got installed, but it's definitely well worth keeping your WordPress up to date. If you let it get out of date, it'll get very vulnerable to hackers. Because WordPress is so popular, hackers target WordPress sites, especially out of date ones. Fortunately though, you can update within WordPress. You don't need to download the files and re-upload them or anything like that. It all happens within the system. So you just have to click the button and then let the update happen. There we go. Okay, so back to the dashboard. I'm going to work our way down the menu on the left there. So actually this homepage you probably won't use a great deal, although it does have some handy quick links. But I'm going to start by looking at posts. So you'll only really be interested in posts if you are actually making a blog. But if you are, this is where you'll write your blog posts. So if we click on the example one there, that will take us to the edit screen where we can change the post title and we can change the permalink as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. And we've got the main content of our blog post here. So we can just start typing something like that. And we can use formatting as well. But because we're coders, we're probably going to prefer the text version, which allows us to use HTML to make our posts look however we want. From here, while you're writing your post, you can preview the changes, and that will then load up your changes without actually posting them on the site. But when you're ready, you can then update that post and then it will be live on your actual website. Once you've done that, one really handy feature of WordPress is that you can go back. So if you click Browse next to revisions, you can actually revert to a previous version. So if you want to get rid of those changes, you just go back and you can see the changes and restore the autosave and then update again, and then your changes will be undone. So that's really handy if you want to go back and revert to an older version. We can then choose a bunch of formatting options. So we can have it as an image, a video, a quote, link, a gallery, even audio and chat as well. So you can experiment with those different post types, but normally we're going to stick with the standard. Next up is categories. These are really useful ways to categorize your blog posts. So you might have a funny category, for example, or I don't know, a world news category if you were doing a news website, something like that. And then your users can view those specific categories very easily and search them as well. I've used categories on several occasions when I'm not actually doing a blog site. For example, if you were building a quiz website, you could use a WordPress plugin and then each post would represent a quiz. So don't be fooled into thinking that posts are exclusively for blogs. You can use them to display any kind of content. And then further down here, we've got tags, which are much like categories, but we can assign them more arbitrarily. So if we were writing an article about coding, we might have HTML, JavaScript, and fun as being our tags, something like that. And then once again, the users can search within the tags just like they can with categories, but it's a bit less formal and we can assign them wherever we like. Again, you could use tags to have ways of categorizing quiz questions or your worksheets, whatever it was that you wanted to share on your site, not necessarily just blog posts. And finally, we can set a featured image there, which is as simple as just uploading a file and then extracting it from the media library. Now, I mentioned the permalinks earlier. So by default, the pages look like this with a not particularly friendly looking URL at the end there. So if you click change permalinks, then you can set them up to have a date or a month or have a numeric look like that. I normally go for the very simple post name, and then that will just give a URL that looks like that, which is a bit friendlier and more shareable. So let's save our permalink settings. And then I'll just go back and refresh the page here, and let's see what this link has changed to. You can see it's a much nicer now /hello world. And I could change that if I wanted. If I didn't want the hyphen in there, then I could just change that and click OK. And then update, and that's all saved. So that's how posts work. We've looked at categories and tags as well, although you can edit them directly on those pages. You don't have to edit them within a post page. Now, media is much what we saw just now. Normally, I don't look at the media library specifically, but when I want to add an item to a post, I just use the option right there. So if we edit again, so if I want to add some media here, I would just click add media, and that takes me to the media library. But if you want to specifically manage your media, then you might want to do it there. Pages then are slightly different to posts. They look very similar. So we've got a sample page here. And if we edit that, you can see we've got some nice default content there. And let's have a little look at our sample page as well. So I just command clicked there to open it up in a new tab. And you can see it looks like this. So pages are different to posts because they're intended to store more permanent content. So to use my quiz website example again, you might use your pages to have a contact form, an about page, or a list of all the quizzes that are available, and then you might store the quizzes themselves on posts. So they are different in function, although in form they're pretty similar, and we can edit them in the same way, set up a featured image, although we don't generally assign them to categories because they're more standalone. All right, then we've got comments, which again may be useful for you if you're running a blog of some sort, but if you're not, you may want to disable comments. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But here we've got our sample comment, which we can either unapprove, reply to, or send to spam. Now, the appearance tab is where things get really interesting. So I'm going to save themes for the next video, but this is where we would add a new theme where we can completely change the look of our site, and also where we would customize what appears in various places. That's a pretty meaty topic in itself though, so we're going to do that separately in the next video. Plugins. We'll have a quick look at what plugins are installed by default. Most of these you won't be using directly, but they are working in the background. But WordPress has a huge community that are building plugins. And if we do a quick search for WordPress plugins, find 43,000 plugins are available. So we've got bbPress forum software, caching software that speeds up your site, BuddyPress turns your site into a social network, theme check to make sure your theme is working correctly, and there's a lot more in there. Almost anything you could want to do with a website, you can probably find a WordPress plugin that does it. The plugin ecosystem is one of the best reasons to develop with WordPress and really can save a huge amount of time when creating things like contact forms, login systems, or social features. Speaking of which, we can add users to our sites as well. So most sites you probably won't want to have users, but you might want to have, for example, a single admin. who may be you, who is able to manage the site, and then your client might want to be a member of the site as well. So I've just put some example usernames in there, and then they can be a number of different roles. So they can be a subscriber, a contributor, author, editor, or administrator. With most clients, you'd probably want to make them an editor, which means that they could edit the site themselves without having access to advanced features with which they might break the site. Again, one of the best features of WordPress is that clients are able to update the content without actually having to know any code at all. So that's generally how you'll use users. But as I say, you can use WordPress to create login websites as well, which means that features like password resets and secure login systems are set up for you by default. Moving swiftly on, tools, we're going to jump over because there's nothing particularly useful for us there. But settings, it is worth, whenever you set up a new WordPress site, to just quickly go through the settings. So we'll start at General. This is where the tagline, just another WordPress site, is put. So you'll probably want to change that to something which explains what your website does a little bit. This is our WordPress URL. And at the moment, registration is switched off. We might want to switch that on to allow people to register and comment. But we could also allow people to even be an editor or an administrator when they sign up. Change the time zone, date format, and a bunch of other stuff that we're probably not that interested in. The writing settings, I don't normally go in and edit these very much, but you can actually post via email if you want to, but we'll jump over that and go to read, where there's one important setting, and that's what you want your front page to display. So by default, it displays your latest posts, but you might well want to have a static front page. And there we can set that to our sample page if you want. And then that will mean that your home page is no longer a list of posts, but some content instead. So if you're not creating a blog, then that's going to be likely the way that you want to set things up. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know about WordPress. As a web developer though, most of your work is going to be in changing the appearance of the site. So you'll want to set up firstly a good looking site, but also one that has the functionality that you or your client want and has all the links and the options in the right places. So we do most of that with working with themes, and that'll be the topic of our next video.